Our first focus today is the intelligent enterprise in 2018. What does the coming year hold? How can you measure automation ROI, and why is AI a critical tool in the intelligent enterprise toolkit? Our first speaker is keynote Mr. Yuval Dvir. Yuval is the head of scale partnerships at Google Cloud. His illustrious career as a digital transformation executive and manager has seen him develop high-performing teams using data, culture, and agility as his main pillars. In his current role, he's responsible for improving customer experience for advertisers, publishers, and other customers, as well as leading strategy and operations across various online channels. He previously worked as Global Head of Business Transformation at Microsoft, where he rebuilt Skype's data infrastructure and data visualization. Today, he'll be talking to us about how to achieve a balance of intelligence, machine, and human for the workplace.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yuval Dvir. I work for Google, and I'm going to talk about some of the technology that we're seeing nowadays in the workplace and where we see, or I see, the future, and why I do see today more than ever before, I guess, the need to strike a sort of better balance in the world of the workplace today, just to the advancement of technology and the frequency of change that we've experiencing over the past few years and decades. So just to start us off, I'll introduce some of the topics that I'm interested in working on. And primarily, I am working on the intersections between what I see as technology, people, business, and organization. And you need to kind of find the balance between each one of those categories and across them in order to really find the right sort of tune for your specific DNA of the organization. And increasingly, I've been focusing also on the brain and receiving and getting inspirations from it due to the studies that I'm doing in applied neuroscience, and not just on the physiology and anatomy of the brain, but also on the psychology, how we make decisions. And you would be amazed on how much we can learn from how the brain actually operates, the efficiency, the balance of it. And there's a famous saying that a lot of neuroscientists say is that the mind, or our mindset, is what the brain actually does. So it all basically comes back to all those neurons firing and neurotransmitting that actually goes into sort of how we behave in the workplace, and it helps us deal with, I guess, one another, but also in the technology as well. And this is part of something that we're seeing today, which is the cognitive sort of revolution. So in the past, you had different cognitive sciences. This is just an example of three, all on their own sort of path. But nowadays, with infotech and biotech coming together, we're seeing sort of a convergence of them, and we're seeing a cross-pollination of ideas. And Geoffrey Hinton, one of the sort of forefathers of AI, is basically sees AI as building the bridge between computer science and biology. And that's what gets me fascinated about the prospects of the future. Because if you think of it, or when I think of it, the two things that science hasn't really provided enough information for us is, I guess, the riddle of the brain or humanity, and on the other hand, what's behind in the universe. But I think we're getting close of at least cracking the riddle of humanity, or at least getting the tools in order to do that. And this was something that was said by Yuval Noah Harari. That's a different Yuval, which I do recommend his books definitely. So going back into the workplace, some of the things that I've learned throughout my career currently and in the past is that, again, with all the advancement of technology, it can only be as good as the people that are implementing it. People can only be as good as the culture allows them to be. So even a team of superstars, if they don't have the right culture or the right bonding between them, they're not going to deliver on their potential and the promise. And culture is eventually derived from the leadership. That's why those elements together, again, just as we talked before in terms of organization, business, people, and technology, need to work together in order to achieve that balance for your specific situation and organization. And that's basically the art of the science of it. So that's a baseline, everyone, on the disruption we're seeing in the market. Again, looking at from those three specific lenses: technology, people, and business. From a technology perspective, sort of the main things that we're seeing is the abundance of data, more sensors out there. We're measuring everything at night or at day, and we're sharing it. And that's why we have an increase in global internet traffic. And this is just one example of a Cisco study. Mobility and mobile is the main device that we use. And cloud is something that powers all these technologies together. And again, just recently, I guess back in October 2016, we've seen the expansion of internet traffic through mobile and tablet as opposed to desktop, and you see that trend continuing as well. From a cloud perspective, the whole idea of cloud is what I call abstraction. Increase the abstraction layer, both for the users and also for the IT professional, reaching in a way a serverless cloud situation that we talk about nowadays, which basically lets you or your company focus on what you do best and not worrying about the DevOps, the frameworks, and the infrastructure that's needed in order to power the tools and the services and application that you actually develop, beyond the cost, agility, and other sort of elements and security, obviously, that cloud actually provides. So taking all these technology together, mobile, data, and cloud, primarily compute and storage, they actually brought, again, a reemergence of artificial intelligence. And it's because of the current timing that we have these technologies, we're talking about with artificial intelligence, which, again, it's not a new technology, but nowadays it's come to age. And this is just one example of AI in action. The Boston Dynamics robot. We're not going to see the entire video, but what I want to talk about is that there's a lot of concerns as well. One of the main people who are talking about concern is Elon Musk about how we manage eventually AI, not just in terms of flipping robots, but other elements as well. We're going to touch a few of them. As I mentioned before, artificial neural networks, which are the basis or the main implementation of artificial intelligence and machine learning, are loosely following the human brain or the biological neural networks. What we see over here is a regular sort of neuron in a brain. The amazing thing about it is that it can get up to 10,000, even more signals from different neurons, and through its axon in the middle, provide that signals to thousands of other sort of neurons. And it's those networks that are firing for any sort of trigger that actually create sometimes memory, actions, behaviors, and whatnot. That sort of approach has been mimicked in artificial neural networks. The one thing that I think we're still not there is the gene expression and the creation of proteins as a result of these triggers. And that's something that's not easily to do in computer science as opposed to biology. So looking into artificial neural network or the deep neural network, there's two areas that need to do. First of all is the training. You feed the algorithm training material, and eventually it comes up with an output, multiple layers. Similar very much to a brain, especially in vision. So vision is, again, hierarchical in the same manner. We've got the primary vertical, then we go color, motion, and according to that, we figure things out. And as you see, it's pretty much the same as we do with artificial neural network. Eventually, after the machine or the algorithm is trained, then we get the probability, highest probability in terms of whether it's a cat or a dog, with a minimal error message as well. And another thing that we're talking nowadays on the cloud is the ability to train algorithm really on the cloud and then deploy that on the edge, which does promote very much the IoT market and basically the way things are going as well. And we'll see more about that. There's other sort of applications of artificial intelligence. The one thing that I am excited about is primarily the healthcare ones. This is an example of a collaboration that Google had with Stanford University. Basically, you have an application, you scan lesions, and it can tell you basically on the left, that's basically the probability of whether it's malignant, and on the right-hand side, whether it's benign or not. And there was a few advantages for it. First of all, people with no access to medical physicians can use that as a sort of the first approach to find out whether they are suffering from skin cancer. And in addition to that, it helps also current healthcare practices in the West, just to ensure that not everybody needs to go straight away to the hospital. They have some sort of diagnostic statistic in their place. And lastly, it's a fantastic tool for physicians, not to replace them, but another dimension to help them ensure that maybe they're not missing something and limit sort of the error, the human error element. In addition to that, you could apply AI in data centers to reduce cost. Salt cucumbers in Japan, translation is a big thing, and also optimizing the solar energy that you can get from your roof. And come to think about it, artificial intelligence came to the public domain through games. This is the famous game where Kasparov lost to the game of chess. Then we had Jeopardy as well. And recently we have DeepMind, AlphaGo beating Lisa Dole in the game of Go, which one thing about it is much more complicated and complex than chess. And the other thing that was interesting about the game was that something was called Move 37, in which the AlphaGo algorithm made a move which was totally unorthodox for the thousands or hundreds of years of game of Go. And that leads us to something to consider as machine creativity, whereas it actually is the machine seeping through the data and seeing a pattern or a new pattern to win, which eluded us humans for a long time. So that's interesting. Again, use AI as well with the American Heart Association to prevent and reduce the error rate for human error. And it has, self-taught artificial intelligence beat doctors in predicting those heart attacks. So this is just an example of where we can go with this. Obviously, driverless cars is another great example, another opportunity of testing algorithm in the cloud and deploying it on the edge being the car. This is an example of what sort of a car would see on the highway. This is more complex in an urban environment. And then going back to the people perspective. So nowadays we're more urbanized, we're more social, and from employee perspective, and this is where it goes into the organization, things have changed as well. The purpose, motivation, the hours are changing, and that puts some tension on the regular sort of behavior of management, leadership, and also the structure of how the organization operates. And that's something that I would see changing more and more as we move forward. In addition to that, you've got the gig economy, again, coming or triggered from flexibility that people require, and how all this plays into the organization is going to be an interesting move. So all these issues, all these changes that are triggered by technology are coming to the organization, large and small, and how we respond to that is going to be critical to whether we can leverage technology for the better, or actually technology is going to be our worst enemy in a way. And there's a few elements that you can use in the workplace. It's never really just one thing to help with technology. That actually goes hand in hand and helps it. So the technology in itself cannot solve the issues. Those elements in themselves, such as agility, cannot solve them, but a good balance and combination between them can really sort of drive the change forward in the organization. I'm going to touch on a few of them. First of all is Agile, came from software development, but very useful for management as well, especially in a dynamic market that we're living in today. And it does require a taming from the leadership, so taming their need for unachievable certainty, because nobody can really predict the future. And we need to be able to find the right balance between having the plan and focus on the execution, learning from that. Dogfooding is just one example of that. This is an example that I had back when I led the transformation at Skype. We couldn't expect all the changes that came through, and I'll name a few. There was a Microsoft acquisition. We had a Messenger migration, combination of consolidation with Microsoft Link, which doubled our mandate in a way. We moved at the time from a peer-to-peer client server and then a fully cloud infrastructure. And then Microsoft, that giant that hasn't changed for a long time, decided to reorg itself functionally. And then we had Steve Ballmer sort of resigning with no clear succession plan, which led to sort of a lot of uncertainty. So on the one hand, it was challenging. On the other hand, bigger news going on, our transformation team could move actually further still. The other thing is being lean is critical, especially today, because there's so many things out there. And I think the great example I can give is that for every 1 hour you watch on YouTube or Netflix, there's about a few thousand hours being uploaded of new content. So we're in a losing battle anyway. And that element of a fear of missing out is big with a lot of people. I know that I have it as well. But that's why nowadays less has never been more than more, if you know what I mean, in organizations today. Jeff Bezos from Amazon has the 2-pizza rule, which basically says whenever you need more than 2 pizzas to feed a team, that team is too big, and he follows that. And that's to ensure that we keep it to a minimum, because that's the fastest way to move forward. Change is critical. Change, in a way, is the essence, I guess, of management nowadays and leadership. The one thing that I can say about that is that we always need to opt for organic adoption. Anything that is forced, either from a top-down perspective or bottom-up, will not stick for the long run, and that's what we're trying to do. Then we move to the culture, which I see as the bonding between everything. And to illustrate culture, I have this. This is a Norse live attack map, cyber attack map. So the origins and the targets and the type of attacks. And the reason that I have this to illustrate culture is that from Harvard Business Review, many times those attacks or the cyber attacks happen, not all the time, obviously, due to a disgruntled employee leaving something sort of open or not doing their job as they should have. So invest in technology, but also invest in the people in order to avoid sometimes all these issues. Teams is important, again, balance of how the team operates. You don't need a team of all of them ace star players. Sometimes you need a mix, and you need to let them sort of take their work to the best of their abilities, to what they're good at. And how a team works and how it operates would always be better than who's on the team. And I always consider the team to be the basic unit of the organization, not the individuals. But if you look at performance reviews nowadays in many organizations, they focus on individuals again, which I don't think should only be the case when it talks to teams. So we come towards the summary. So the whole idea of working with technology and AI is just another technology of that. It's a very significant one. It does leverage, as I mentioned, the cloud, the data, and the mobile, the fact that we are taking so many photos and AI is so good with vision. But it does require a balance. And many people think that, with the emergence of AI, the one thing that we've learned is actually to differentiate between what humans do best and what machines or algorithms do best. And we need to take those into consideration for a sort of a fruitful future. And it's not just balancing between the art and science, it's between, the being radical with the idea, or practical, having the conviction, humility, between doing, planning, and thinking on execution, and so on and so forth. And the late Peter Drucker mentioned it, that, and to a certain extent I agree with that, a lot of the problems that we're dealing with today, and I think AI has helped us understand that, are very, very much human questions and not necessarily just technology questions. I believe it's basically both, and those two are very much combined. And just it's going to finish off with a positive twist. I think that eventually a human plus machine and the way we can operate together, each one with their own sort of advantage, that will always defeat sort of, in a way, the super machine or the superhuman in the other way. And with that, I'm pretty much done. Thank you very much, and hope you have a great day.
Yuval, thank you so much for that very insightful presentation. It's certainly given me a lot of food for thought and really set the tone for the day. Yuval will now be available on the live chat function to answer any questions that you might have. To access this, click on the networking tab on the blue button at the top of your page. Make the most of not having to stick your hand up in front of a whole group of people and ask this expert your questions.